At the beginning of the year, I watched Saltburn, which is that movie directed by Emerald Fennell and that has Jacob Elordi in Golden Angel Wings. I love the style the movie was written at, and the plot, it was something. I thought it was entertaining, okay, and I thought it was weird, and I was wondering if there would be any book around that would give me the same vibes as Saltburn. So this video, it's basically me trying to find books with the same vibes as Saltburn. So throughout the past couple of weeks, I've been trying to search for books that would probably have the same vibes, and then I had a little list of books that could work, and then I decided to cross out some of those books and stick to some little rules, some things I think could match the vibe of the movie. One of them was to have a main character that would stop at nothing to reach what they want. I wanted a character that seemed to be possibly unlikable, a character that was kind of a mystery to the reader, or that would be a little bit unhinged. And then I spotted this book on my TBR that I thought maybe, very much maybe, it could give me the same vibes as Saltburn, and that was Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. So this book, it is written as a memoir, and quite literally as a memoir. I think the best way for me to show you exactly how it is just showing you how, like, how this book, it's, I forgot the name in English, built. So right here we have the regular page introducing us to the book that we're reading, Biography of X. Then we skipped a little bit more pages, and then we have this full page introducing us to the book, which in this case it's written by Luca, clearly not Catherine Lacey. But that's because this book, it is a speculative fiction, literary fiction book that is written in the format of a memoir, even though it is not a memoir. So you can see here, like, we have a fake section introducing us, telling us when the book was written, when it was published, who edited, like full everything, because it's written as a memoir. I think I find it kind of hard to describe how it is written because it was such a unique book. I don't think I ever read a book like this. But basically, Biography of X, it's a memoir of the wife of X, who was this mysterious artist. She was very, very mysterious to the point where even her partner of many years, she didn't know where X was born. She didn't know what was X's real birth name, and there were just so many mysteries surrounding X. And after the widow, Luca, she finds out some things that seem to be... She finds out some secrets about X to embark on the journey of researching her late wife's life. I'm currently 76 pages into Biography of X, and this book is quite interesting because it is literally a biography that the main character of the book is writing. She is writing about her wife, or her late wife, who was this very mysterious artist, and after she died, the main character, she discovered a lot of things about her wife, and turns out she doesn't know much about what her wife's life was like before they met. And yeah, it's quite interesting because this book also involves photos, entire pictures, and quite interesting. I'm finding the writing to be quite gripping. I feel like I'm immersed in the novel. One thing I wasn't expecting is that I knew this book was literary fiction, but it has some sprinkles of speculative fiction, which is also quite interesting to see in this novel, and so far I'm really enjoying. In terms of it feeling like Saltburn, it's kind of feeling like Saltburn actually, in the sense that X seems to do anything to reach her goals, including doing some things that are quite shady, and she seems to really enjoy power and that mysterious aspect to her. There is a bit of this unhinged feel that we have with Saltburn that there is with this book. The only things that are missing are the very bright colors inside, and also we need to get a little bit more unhinged, a little bit more rich vibes, a little bit even more of societal critique, even though this book it does have, especially with the speculative fiction sprinkles. That part surprised me, it pleasantly surprised me, and yeah, so far I'm enjoying. So let's go back to reading it and see how it progresses, because so far it took a turn I wasn't expecting. I'm over halfway through Biography of X, and in terms of it feeling like Saltburn, it does a little in the sense that the more you figure out things about the characters in this book, you realize how kind of unhinged and easy they reach, but also being hypocritical, and there is this weirdness to it that kind of feels like Saltburn in some ways, but also in others it doesn't, mainly because we are following the stories in a different medium, and it is not because this is a book, but because the wife of X, who is this mysterious artist, she's writing a biography and discovering a lot of things about her wife, and there are these things that are a little bit different because also there is a sprinkle of speculative fiction, so it's not exactly like Saltburn, but so far it's not also that different in terms of vibe. So let me finish this book and then I'll give you a final review, and then I will see if I decide if this book truly is kind of Saltburny. One thing I was actually pleasantly surprised about this book is that it has hints of speculative fiction, in the sense that this book takes place in an alternate reality United States, where we have a very far-right fundamentalist party declare independence from the United States, and basically the south of the United States is now this dystopian extreme right country where they are basically stuck in the 19th century forever, or like very early 20th century forever. And then we have the northern area of the United States, which is, they're like super progressive, but super progressive in a way that where they're even more progressive than the United States is right now. But I was very pleasantly surprised by the fact that we have sprinkles of speculative fiction. Also, the writing style, I was pleasantly surprised by the writing. I thought it was really interesting the way this book was formatted, and also like this book includes things such as photos, which I wasn't expecting. I think it is really beautiful inside. One thing I'm going to say about this book is that I felt like I read it a little bit slow, or slower than I would usually read. About the plot, these characters are unlikable. I did enjoy the narrative. I thought it was really interesting. I found myself gravitating to this book because I wanted to figure out what would happen next, what was going on, why X was so mysterious. X, the artist X, she is very, very, very unlikable. And these covers make so much more sense now that I read it. In terms of this book having Saltburn vibes, I would say it's mid-level, as I was expecting. If you want a narrative where you're basically uncovering the mysteries and uncovering who a person really is, then this book is a good recommendation if that is the kind of Saltburn vibes you're looking for. And I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. Now let's move on to the second book in my list of books I wanted to read because I thought they might have Saltburn vibes. and it is Bright Shed Revisited. But apparently, Bright Shed Revisited was a book that inspired Saltburn, and I can clearly see how this book inspired Saltburn. So, what is this book about? In Bright Shed Revisited, we are basically following Captain Charles Ryder, and he is currently serving for the English Army because this book takes place actually around the 1940s, 1950s, so the book starts right in the middle of the Second World War. But basically, Captain Charles Ryder, he went to Oxford and there he met a man called Sebastian Flight, who is part of this weird, kind of eccentric aristocratic family that lives in a palace in the countryside, or it's not exactly a palace, it used to be a palace, but now it is a house in the countryside of England. Captain Ryder, he becomes really good friends with Sebastian, and he ends up spending his vacations and Christmas and all those holidays that happen throughout the year he spends with the Flight family, with whom he ends up being really good friends with and really close to. I'm around 22% on Pratchett Revisited. This is chapter 3 in book 1 because this book is divided. I'm not sure if it is all editions of this book, but my edition, there are 3 books inside this Kindle file, and I am on chapter 3 from the first book. And my first impression of this book was that it is indeed very Saltburny. You can really tell how much this book inspired Saltburn, especially the relationship between the characters. The relationship between the characters, if that is what you're looking for in a book, this book has the Saltburn style of relationship. So the plot, it is interesting, but I'm having trouble with the writing style. It's just not for me. Also, there are a lot of very long paragraphs, and they are so common and so long to the point where it was getting kind of annoying to read it on the Kindle. So I'm now reading on my tablet because the screen is bigger and I'm having a better experience this way. But yeah, the writing style, it's just something, it's just not for me. So I'm not sure if I will end up reading all 3 of the books in this edition. I might finish the first book and then I'll give you a review, but I'm still not sure if I want to read all 3 books just because of this writing style. Just, it's kind of, it's irking me a little bit. Okay, another thing to add about this book is that the main characters, they are quite the wealthy, they have the English cottage, not cottage, but the English countryside house that used to be a castle, and they are quite blind to their privileges, just like in Saltburn, and they are just a weird family. So yeah, there's a lot of Saltburn. You can really tell how much this book inspired Saltburn. But at this point in the book, I don't know how many pages I'm in because my edition, my Kindle edition, doesn't give me pages. It just says that it is 439 pages and that I'm 22% in. So maybe I should do the math and check out which page I'm at exactly. But at this point in the book, if I want to continue experiencing these vibes, I will just watch Saltburn again. It will be much faster to watch the movie than to finish reading a 439 page book that the plot is kind of meek so far and the writing, it's just not for me. In the prologue, or not the prologue, but there was an introduction by the author to this book, which this book's from 1940s. But it says, oh, we needed to cut some parts of this book, we needed to do some adaptations to this book, and I'm not sure if it is because of those adaptations that we got those extremely long paragraphs that made reading this book annoying, and personally I don't recommend reading this book on a Kindle. Maybe read on a tablet, on a computer, maybe get a physical copy of this book, but the Kindle was truly, I found it annoying to read just because of those very long chapters, not chapters, but paragraphs and blocks of texts. But also sometimes the punctuation, I'm kind of like, that's a bit confusing. The construction of the sentences sometimes it is a bit confusing. But then we get sections like the one that I'm now, where like it's chill. The paragraphs are an okay length. The sentences, they make sense. The punctuation makes sense, and everything about the construction of this text and this section of the book that I'm reading, the text makes sense. While at some parts it's just so bizarre. So the story, it's divided between 3 books: book 1, book 2, and book 3, and my edition is basically the 3 books combined. To be completely honest and transparent, I only read book 1 of Ratchet Revisited, and I'm not sure if I'll ever finish reading the 3 books. So according to the information on my Kindle, this book has 439 pages, and apparently the average reading time for the whole book is 7 hours. I got up to 42%, which is a few pages into book 2. But before I talk more about my thoughts on the plot of the book and how much Saltburn it is, let me just tell you a little bit about why I won't be continuing to read Ratchet Revisited, or at least I don't have any plans to continue. So the main thing is that the writing style is just not for me. I thought the story there was a lot of telling, in part because I think it's because it is the memories of Captain Ryder, but for me it was way too much telling of what was going on and what is the character's personality, and way too little of showing what is going on. Also, the writing style, I thought it was really peculiar, the way we would have these extremely like pages long paragraphs, and then we would have like regular size paragraphs. The phrases, sometimes the way they were written and the way they were constructed, they didn't make that much sense. The same with the dialogue and the whole structure of chapters itself. And the chapters were actually really long, and it was not, for me personally, it was not an enjoyable experience to read this book. The writing style is just not something I enjoy and that I vibe with. And now let's move on to the story. Honestly, I thought it was kind of boring. The Fight family, they are basically this extremely wealthy aristocratic family, and they're eccentric. They are also completely blind to all their privileges, and there are moments where they acknowledge their privileges, but you can tell they are blind to how much privilege they have. And in terms of this book having Saltburn vibes, it completely does, in the sense that it has a very similar setting. Also, the relationship dynamics between the characters, they do resemble a lot, especially the relationship between Captain Ryder and Sebastian, the aristocratic best friend he meets in Oxford. Even the room Captain Ryder used to live at in Oxford, it is the same room as the one Oliver Quick lives in Saltburn. If you are looking for a book that has the same vibes as Saltburn in terms of the relationship dynamics and the setting, then Ratchet Revisited might be a good option. Now let's move on to the third book I will talk about in this video, and that book is A Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. This is the first book in the Mr. Ripley series, and this is a classic thriller. I started reading this book because of Jack Edward, because in one of his videos he said, oh, if you like Saltburn, have you tried reading this book? And it was right at the exact time for when I was researching for books to read that would have Saltburn vibes, and let me tell you, Jack was right. So what this book it is about? It follows Tom Ripley. Let me just read you the blurb that is on the back of the book. Tom Ripley is struggling to stay one step ahead of his creditors and the law when an unexpected acquaintance offers him a free trip to Europe and a chance to start over. Ripley wants money, success, and a good life, and he's willing to kill for it. When his newfound happiness is threatened, his response is as swift as it is shocking. So I'll read the B-roll from me reading this book and the commentary from me reading this book, and then we'll talk more about this book. So I'm on page 67 of The Talented Mr. Ripley, and I think I know who will be the first person to go by the hands of Mr. Ripley. And one thing that caught my attention in this book is the writing. It's really interesting, it's really gripping. This book, it is a classic. It's from, I believe, let me confirm, 1950s or something. Yes, it was first published in 1955, and it's a classic, but it is so easy to read, and it is such a page turner. And even though it takes place in the 50s in Italy, it kind of feels modern, like a contemporary book, not only in the writing, but I don't know, it just feels contemporary in a good way, and I'm really enjoying this book. It does have kind of Saltburn vibes so far, even though it doesn't take place in countryside England. Mr. Ripley is very the main character in Saltburn, and Dickie, the little blind Dickie that seems to always favor one friend and likes to have the attention of people being almost exclusively on him, apparently. At least that's the feeling I'm getting from Tiki so far. He's giving me very much Jacob Elordi's character. First of all, I was wrong about who Mr. Ripley would kill first. Actually, the person I thought Mr. Ripley would kill first, he completely didn't kill them. That person was still alive by the end of the book. But let me tell you, Jack Edwards was right. This book has so much Saltburn vibes. So, what I thought about this book, basically, it does have some very long paragraphs, but in this book it makes sense, and I thought the writing, I really enjoyed the writing. I thought it was very bingeable, and I don't know, I just really liked it. In some ways, even though this book is from the 1950s, the writing feels very contemporary, and the storytelling also. This book was such a page turner and so interesting. I finished, it was one of those instances where you finish a chapter and then you want to read another chapter because you want to find out what it is right now, what is going on, what will happen next, because Tom is just so... Tom has the same vibes as Oliver Quick in Saltburn. He's kind of this awkward but charming character that will stop at absolutely nothing to reach his very selfish goals. This man, he finds someone that is willing to pay for his trip to Europe, he cons them, and then he gets close to a very rich, naive young man, becomes really good friends with him, and then he won't stop at nothing to reach his goal of having an amazing summer and year frolicking through Europe. This book doesn't have the same setting as Saltburn, because this book takes place, the majority of this book takes place in Italy. The characters their dynamics are not exactly the same, but this book has so much Saltburn vibes. I was really surprised because Mr. Ripley has, it seems like Oliver Quick was shaped in the same mold as Mr. Ripley, and also the people that pay for Mr. Ripley's trip, they are the family of this man called Dickie Greenleaf or Richard Greenleaf. Everybody calls him Dickie. They're also, I wouldn't say they're blind to their privileges, but they are also very naive in the sense that they do believe in Mr. Ripley.